If you've embarked on the surrogacy process and you've started searching for solutions and trying to figure out what this thing is all about, you've probably come across some information that's discussed escrow accounts or attorney-client trust accounts and where the money for a surrogacy journey should be. Well, if you're wondering about that, you're in the right place because in this episode, we're going to discuss what is a surrogacy escrow account. What's up? I'm Corlandos Scott, and I'm a surrogacy attorney out of Los Angeles. And that means that surrogacy is what I do. I mean, it's not what I do physically, but I help people who are growing their family through surrogacy, you see? And I help surrogates who are helping people grow their family through surrogacy. And in this episode, we're going to talk about the money in surrogacy. So I want to talk about where that money has to be held. We're talking about trust accounts and escrow accounts. So I'll talk about the types of escrow accounts. We'll cover how it works in surrogacy arrangements. And I'll talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of doing it a certain way. Let's dive in. Let's start with just discussing escrow accounts in general. When we talk about escrow in general, we're talking about the legal arrangement between an escrow company and its clients. Now, an escrow essentially is an account that's held and managed by a third party for some clients, and they act as sort of a depository of assets or money or property, and their sole purpose is to disperse that money or that property or those assets dependent on the conditions agreed upon by the two parties in the transaction. That's a whole lot of words. That means that if you and I are going to have a deal together, we're going to let the money be held by somebody else. And when we do what we're supposed to do, that third party pays out the money. Make sense? Yeah. The purpose of an escrow company or the purpose for having an escrow account is really to protect the parties involved. If two parties are entering into an agreement with one another and they don't know each other enough to trust each other, and really the reason that an escrow account or escrow services exists is to protect all the parties in a transaction. If you're entering into a transaction with someone, you don't want to have to ask, can I trust them to pay the money that they're going to pay when I'm supposed to do the thing that I'm supposed to do? So we leave the money with that third party. And there's even different types of escrow services for different sectors of the market and the economy. Here's a few. We've got escrow account management for real estate, for taxes and insurance, for trust accounts, for internet, for mortgages, for intellectual property. We have escrow accounts for mergers and acquisitions, for construction, and even escrow accounts for gambling. Who'd have thought? But you're here because you want to know what's up with escrow accounts for surrogacy. Well, a surrogacy escrow account is an arrangement that's set up with a third party or an independent or bonded escrow holder, you could say. Even in surrogacy, the funds can be held by a trust account maintained by a surrogacy attorney. And here's how it works. In surrogacy, an escrow is more known as, really a trust account set up by the intended parents before getting matched or during the process of getting legal representation. Essentially, what they do is engage the services of an escrow company or an independent escrow management firm or an attorney who's holding it in their attorney-client trust account, and they provide services to the intended parent by paying out the money for the process that is to be the surrogacy arrangement. And they pay the funds according to the contract that's entered into by the parent and by the surrogate. Before I talk about why you need one, let's talk about how you establish it. And it's really pretty simple. It's whatever the process is for that escrow company to set up your account. So you'll probably have to fill out some paperwork, provide some banking information, set up a schedule of payments, let them know when the payments are going to be triggered. You'll probably have to give them the surrogacy contract so that they can talk about knowing the surrogacy agreement milestones and when those things need to be paid for and when funds need to leave the account. Also, you're going to let them know the amounts that are needed to be dispersed, along with the requirements for when they can be dispersed. You don't want them just holding your money and paying out just because the contract said so. They need to confirm these things. They need to see that the conditions have been met and the requirements have been met. Also, you want to make sure that you're able to get a monthly statement, at the very least a monthly statement, but you want some kind of notice to you about what payments have been made. You really want to keep track of every dollar that goes out of that account. Why is that? Because after the surrogacy arrangement is over, you should get back any funds that remain in that account. After all, it's your money. So you may be asking, do I need one? Like, do I need an escrow account or a trust management account? Like, why does it matter? And is it really necessary? Well, my answer is yes, because it is, and yes. It's really for security and protection for all of the parties, not just the surrogate and not just the parents. So let's look at the side of the surrogate. For the surrogate wants to know that if she's going to get pregnant with your baby, then the funds to cover the costs and expenses for the pregnancy should be there. She doesn't want that money to sit in your pocket. Why is that? Because God forbid something happened to you, then your funds are tied up in, probate or wills and estates and all those kind of things. And she's 5 months pregnant wondering, well, how is my insurance going to be paid next month for a baby that doesn't belong to me? So she wants to make sure that the money is out of your hands and into an account that is held by a third party that's separate from you and her. On the intended parent's end, you're assured that your fees and your funds are being held in a safe and secure location. One of the reasons why states like California made it a law that an agency, surrogacy agency or egg donor agency, can no longer hold the funds for a surrogacy journey, it's because there were some bad actors. There were some agencies that sprung up overnight and would ask parents to send in money for the surrogacy journey. And they'd say things like, we need $5,000 for this medication or for that thing, when it really only cost $1,000, and they just pocketed the other four. Or they'd say, we need expenses in this amount, and they would pay them or maybe not pay them. And then the agency shuts down and disappears, and there's nothing that we can do. However, escrow companies and attorneys, we have to be licensed. We have to be bonded by the state. We have to have insurance. So if we play fast and loose with your money, we could risk losing our ability to make a living. And trust me, no attorney or escrow agency wants to lose their entire license for screwing over one client or something. So that's why the state said, from now on, if there is a surrogacy arrangement that's compensated, the money cannot be held by the agency. It has to be held by a licensed bonded escrow company or in an attorney-client trust account. So it protects you as the parent to know that you are going to be able to hold someone accountable for how every dollar of the money in your surrogacy arrangement is spent. Now, I mentioned that California requires it by law, but not every state does. So you could be doing your surrogacy journey in a state or your egg donation journey in a state that doesn't require you to keep the money in an escrow company or an outside third party. And you may be wondering, well, should I still do it? What are the advantages and disadvantages? Well, let's look at those. But before we look at the advantages and disadvantages, I want to ask a big favor of you. It's going to take a lot of effort, and I know it might be kind of tough, but just swipe your mouse down a little bit, or you position your thumb and just click the like button. It really keeps me going. I love it. So is it possible to go through surrogacy without an escrow or trust account? And like I said, if you're in a state that allows it, then yeah, it's possible. I've had clients mostly during their sibling journeys who opted to make all the payments directly to their surrogate. Because the law in California is, if it's a surrogacy arrangement that's put together by a surrogacy facilitator, like an agency, then the money has to be held in an escrow account. But if it's sister and sister or cousin and friend or whatever, and there's no agency involved, there's no surrogacy facilitator, they may be able to do it by themselves. They may not have to have an escrow agent or an attorney-client trust account hold the funds. Also, if you're in a state that doesn't require it, you don't have to. So what happens in those scenarios is the surrogate will directly send the payment or reimbursement request to the intended parents. But that only works in scenarios where there's a proven trust between the parties, a trust that's already established, maybe even during a first journey together or a journey that happened prior to that. And more often than not, even with sibling journeys, intended parents still choose to have an escrow or trust account established. I'll honestly tell you, if I'm representing a surrogate, I will insist, I will advise her with the depths of everything in me to please demand that the money be held in a third-party account. And it's not simply because she doesn't trust or I don't trust the intended parents. It's because we don't know what the future holds. And again, God forbid anything happen to the intended parents and she's in the middle of a pregnancy. We don't want to be left wondering how in the world are we going to facilitate this financially because there's no money anywhere. So let's get to those advantages and disadvantages. Well, some of the advantages of having an outside third party manage the payment process in a surrogacy arrangement, you guys get to sit back. You get to sit back and enjoy the process of the journey. You get a guarantee that all the financial aspects of the process are being managed according to the terms and the conditions of the surrogacy agreement. You'll have a happy and secured surrogate who can focus on keeping herself and the baby healthy instead of worrying about when the next payment for her treatment or the next payment for her next milestone is going to come. She's not worried about the expenses because she knows that a professional who's being held to high standards by either the state bar or the licensing commission is holding them to make those payments in a professional way. Now, what could some of the disadvantages be of working with an escrow company? Well, there is a possibility of delay in payments. Why? Because when a payment request comes across, that escrow company or that attorney who's holding that fund, he has to make sure that the payment request is valid. They have to apply the terms of the contract against that payment request and make sure that it's valid. And once they do, then they can release the payments. So there is a process to that, and you have to allow for that. The other potential disadvantage is there could be lots of paperwork. And the reason that there's lots of paperwork is because those third parties' job is to protect you and to uphold the integrity of the contract. So there's paperwork because if I get a payment request from a surrogate that says, I need $100 for mileage, my question is going to be, what was the mileage for? Where did you drive from? Where was the point of origin? Where did you end? Was it a round trip? I need essentially proof of purchase or an invoice or I need something that proves that what the surrogate is requesting is an actual valid request. So that requires my asking questions, obtaining paperwork, getting invoices, getting receipts, and all of those things. And you could view that as a disadvantage if you're the one that's having to come up with that information. But again, it's for the protection of both parties. At the end of the day, one of the biggest advantages of working with an escrow company or having an attorney hold the funds for a surrogacy arrangement in their attorney-client trust account is that you don't have to keep up with the minutia of making sure payments run on time and keeping the trains running on time. You get to enjoy this 9, 10, 11-month journey with the surrogate who's holding the thing that's most precious to you. But you don't give up all responsibility. It's still your responsibility to stay on top of your service providers and make sure that they're doing a quality job on your behalf. But you don't have to deal with the day in and day out minutia. So if you're curious about how all of this works and you're wondering what to do with the surrogacy process and where to start, I have something for you. It's called the Surrogacy Roadmap. And you can get it by clicking the link below in the description box. It's absolutely free. It's my gift to you for sticking around and for clicking that like button. You clicked it, right? See you in the next video.